My father gave me an ultimatum when I refused to babysit my stepsister's children, so I cut off contact with them. I didn't expect saying no to babysitting would be the thing that blew everything up. But in hindsight, maybe I should have seen it coming. Because when your family sees you as the one who never says no, the first time you do, they act like the world's ending. My stepsister Heather has always been the favorite. Even saying that feels petty, like I'm the bitter one. But you don't grow up in a house like ours and not notice the imbalance. Heather came into our lives when I was 12. My dad had just remarried after my mom passed, and suddenly our home was full of new rules, new routines, and a new daughter who could do no wrong. She was 9. Blonde. Bright. Chipper. Always smiling for the adults. Always poking and smirking when no one was looking. It was like living with a sitcom character that only turned mean when the cameras were off. Still, I tried. I really did. I gave Heather space when she wanted it, shared my things when she didn't ask, and stayed quiet during her tantrums that somehow always ended with me getting scolded. Dad would say, "She's younger. She's still adjusting." And I'd nod. Because back then, I still believed being quiet was the same thing as being strong. Fast forward 15 years, and Heather's now a single mom of 2. 2 kids under 6. 2 kids she can barely manage. 2 kids who scream in public and throw food at family dinners while she scrolls her phone and says things like, "They're just expressing themselves." I don't hate the kids. They're kids. But I don't enjoy being around them. And I definitely don't enjoy being told I'm supposed to love them unconditionally just because we happen to share a few strands of family DNA. I work full-time. I live alone. My days off are rare, and they're sacred. So when Dad called me out of the blue one Wednesday evening, I already had a sense something was off. He never calls midweek. "Hey," he said. "Got a favor to ask." That was his version of small talk. "What's up?" "Heather needs someone to watch the boys this weekend. Just Friday night to Sunday afternoon." I blinked. That's 3 days. She has a conference. She's not in any field that does conferences. He hesitated. It's more like a retreat. Self-care thing. Of course it was. I took a breath. "Dad, I can't. I have plans this weekend." "What plans?" "I don't owe you a list." His tone changed. "Well, if it's just sitting around your apartment, I'd think helping family comes first." And there it was. The guilt. The twist. The not-so-subtle suggestion that my time didn't matter unless it was spent serving someone else. "Dad," I said calmly, "I'm not a babysitter. I didn't have these kids. I've helped in the past, and I'm telling you now, I can't this weekend." He went quiet. Then he said something I'll never forget. "If you don't do this, don't bother coming to Christmas." It didn't come out angry. It came out flat. Resigned. Like he'd already decided I was selfish and was just giving me the chance to prove it. I didn't yell. I didn't argue. I just said, "Okay." Silence. Then him, unsure, "Okay?" "Yeah," I said. "Okay. You want to draw a line in the sand? Fine. I won't be there." He tried to walk it back. Tried to say, "Don't be like that." But it was too late. Because something in me had snapped. Not in a messy way. In a clean, final, surgical way. I ended the call. Turned my phone off. Sat on my couch and stared out the window for a long time. And I thought about all the years I'd played the quiet sibling. The helpful one. The invisible one who made everyone else's life easier. And how none of that mattered the second I said no. I didn't go to Christmas. And I didn't call to explain why. Dad had made it clear, if I didn't babysit Heather's kids, I wasn't welcome. So I took him at his word. It was strangely peaceful. No frantic gift shopping. No stress over long drives or where I'd sleep. No bracing for the moment Heather would dump her kids in my lap and disappear into the kitchen with a mimosa. I made dinner for myself that night, steak, roasted vegetables, a bottle of wine that didn't come from the clearance section. I played music. Watched the snow fall. Wrote a few pages in a journal I hadn't touched in years. And for the first time in a long time, I realized something. Peace feels a lot like absence, at first. But eventually, it starts to feel like freedom. They didn't call. No one did. Not Christmas Day. Not New Year's. Not even a "hope you're okay" text from Heather. It was radio silence. And part of me expected that. But another part of me, some tired, childlike version of me, still held out hope that Dad would come to his senses. That maybe, after sitting at the holiday table with 2 screaming toddlers, no babysitter, and a daughter too busy posting to Instagram to parent, he might finally understand. He didn't. What did happen, though, was unexpected. 3 weeks later, I got a call from Aunt Linda, Dad's sister. We hadn't talked much over the years. Mostly holiday pleasantries. But she called me out of nowhere. "Hey," she said. "I just wanted you to know. I heard what happened. And I think you did the right thing." I sat down. "You heard?" Heather complained to my daughter. "Said you were being selfish and trying to punish the family." She snorted. "Typical." I didn't say anything. She went on. "I just want you to know, I see you. I've seen what you've done for years. And I've seen how they've treated you. If you're protecting your peace now, good. You deserve that." That call stayed with me longer than I expected. Because it was the first time anyone in the family, not out of obligation, but out of truth, acknowledged my side of things. The following week, Heather reached out. Via text. No greeting. No explanation. Just. "Are you planning to apologize to Dad?" I stared at the screen for a long time. Not angry. Not shocked. Just, done. And I finally replied. "I'm not apologizing for setting a boundary. If that makes him uncomfortable, maybe he should think about why." She didn't reply. Didn't need to. Because the silence that followed said everything. The more time passed, the more I realized how much of my life I'd spent managing their needs. Babysitting. Driving Dad to appointments because Heather was too busy. Paying for birthday gifts from both of us. Attending events I didn't care about because Dad insisted family shows up. It was never about being included. It was about being useful. And once I stopped being useful, I stopped being wanted. By March, I'd deleted the family group chat from my phone. Blocked Heather's number. Unfollowed Dad on social media. Not out of spite. Out of clarity. Because I had finally accepted that no amount of helping, showing up, or being the reliable one was ever going to make them treat me like an equal. I started seeing a therapist. It was awkward at first, like trying to stretch a muscle that had been frozen in place for years. But one session changed everything. I was telling her about Heather, how she seemed to float above consequences, and how Dad never held her accountable. And she asked me, "What would happen if you stopped trying to earn their approval?" The question sat in the room like smoke. And the answer came quietly. Nothing. They'd just move on. Like they already have. And she smiled. Exactly. That night, I took out a notebook and made 2 lists. What I've done for them and what they've done for me. The first list took 3 pages. The second barely filled half of one. That wasn't bitterness. That was data. And for someone like me, someone who's always been logical, that was enough. By spring, I stopped referring to them as family in conversation. Not in a dramatic, cutting way. Just, accurately. When people asked about my weekend plans, I stopped saying, Dad's house or my sister's kids. I said, I've got time to myself. Or, I'm focusing on me right now. It wasn't rejection. It was redefinition. And it felt good. It took 5 months before I heard from my dad again. No apology. No reflection. Just a short, cold voicemail. If you're ready to be part of this family again, you know where to find us. I listened to it twice. Not because I needed clarity, just because I couldn't believe how far he'd twisted the narrative. If I'm ready? As if I'd stormed out in some childish tantrum, instead of walking away from an ultimatum that never should have been made. As if the problem was my absence, not the circumstances that made it necessary. I deleted the message. No response. No second thought. And for the first time, I didn't feel guilty. I felt calm. Because I was finally seeing the pattern for what it was. Every interaction with my family had become a transaction. And the currency? My compliance. Around that time, I ran into an old family friend, Mrs. Gallagher, from our old neighborhood. She was always the one who brought homemade pies to block parties and asked the same questions every year like clockwork. How's your dad? How's Heather? How are those sweet little boys? I gave a small smile. They're doing what they do. She gave me a long look. The kind that says she knows more than she lets on. You always were the quiet one, she said. Not anymore, I replied. She smiled wider. Good. The quiet ones are usually the first to figure it out. Life without them settled into something surprisingly soft. Weekends were mine again. I started gardening, small things. Potted herbs. Tomatoes. A stubborn little pepper plant that refused to die even after I forgot to water it for a week. I learned how to cook for one and actually enjoy it. Started leaving my phone on silent more often. And I slept better. A lot better. Because there were no more late-night texts asking if I could swing by to help with something urgent. No more calls on my days off asking if I could pick up the boys, just for a few hours. Just silence. And then, freedom. But silence is funny. It amplifies what matters. And in that quiet, I started remembering things I had buried years ago. Like the time Dad grounded me in high school for missing Heather's dance recital, even though I was at a regional science competition and had told him weeks in advance. Or when Heather borrowed my laptop in college, spilled wine on it, and then made me feel like the bad guy for expecting her to pay to replace it. Or how every family vacation was centered around what she wanted, where she wanted to eat, what she wanted to do, how her kids needed structure. Structure that somehow always required me to step in. None of it had seemed like a big deal at the time. But added up? It painted a very clear picture. They didn't just overlook me. They saw me as a tool. I started journaling more, just thoughts, no structure. One night, I wrote. They don't hate me. They just never learned to respect me. Because I never demanded it. That line hit hard. Because it was true. For years, I thought if I was kind enough, helpful enough, reliable enough, they'd see me. They didn't. They just kept taking. Because I never made them stop. A month later, I got a message from Heather. Not a text. An actual letter. Handwritten. That alone was enough to make me pause. Inside was, well, a mix of things. Some apology. Some justification. A little guilt, a little flattery. She wrote. I know we haven't always been close, and I know I've leaned on you a lot. Maybe too much. But you've always been the strong one, and it's hard not to depend on someone when they never say no. That was the most honest thing she'd ever said to me. And it only confirmed that I had made the right choice. I didn't reply. I didn't cut them off out of rage. I did it because I was tired of performing. Because I wanted to know who I was outside of being their backup plan. And slowly, I was finding that person. They weren't flashy. They weren't loud. But they were whole. And that was more than I'd ever been allowed to be under their roof. By late summer, the silence had become routine. No calls. No guilt trips. No surprise visits. Just space. And I filled that space with things that actually felt like mine. I volunteered at the local library. I started running, badly, at first, but then consistently. I even met someone. Robin, a barista-turned-grad student who loved weird documentaries and made me laugh more in 2 months than my family had in 2 decades. When I told them about my family situation, I braced for the reaction. Instead, they just said, "Sounds like you finally chose you." And that simple sentence struck me harder than any intervention, any family meeting, any forced apology ever had. Because it was a choice. And it was the first time in my life I had made one without worrying who it would inconvenience. Around that time, my dad emailed me. The subject line just said, "Talk." I hovered over it for 10 full minutes before opening it. Inside, he wrote, "It's been a while. I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I wanted to say I've been thinking about everything. About how things unfolded. About how I handled it. I know I let things get out of balance. I leaned on you too much. I asked too much. And then I gave you an ultimatum when what I should have given you was support. I was wrong. I don't expect you to forgive me. But I hope one day you might want to talk. No excuses. No, but Heather. Just accountability." It didn't undo anything. But it mattered. I didn't respond right away. Instead, I printed the email. Sat with it. Read it again in the quiet of my kitchen, with the windows open and the last breeze of summer curling across the table. And I asked myself the real question. Do I want a relationship with my father? Not, does he deserve it? Not, is it my job to repair this? Just that simple, personal question. And the answer surprised me. It wasn't a yes. But it wasn't a hard no, either. It was a maybe. A someday. Because healing doesn't always mean reconnecting. Sometimes it just means letting the anger go. And I was ready to do that. So I wrote him back. A short reply. I got your message. I appreciate it. I need time. I hope you understand. He replied within an hour. Take all the time you need. I'm here. It was the most respectful exchange we'd had in years. And it told me something important. He might be learning. Late, yes. But learning. Heather never followed up. Not about the letter. Not about anything. And I was fine with that. Because her silence wasn't punishment. It was permission. To live my life without the constant noise of someone else's expectations. I started spending holidays with friends. Friends who cooked together, laughed too loud, didn't care about seating charts or who brought what. We played board games, wore pajamas, told stories. And not once did I have to referee someone else's kids, wash dishes alone, or bite my tongue through another backhanded compliment. It wasn't perfect. But it was real. And it was mine. One night, I stood on my balcony, looking at the lights of the city stretching out in front of me. And I realized something. I wasn't grieving the family I had left. I was grieving the version of myself who thought I had to earn love by being useful. And that person? They deserved a better life. I was finally giving it to them. A full year passed before I saw my father again. It wasn't a reunion. It wasn't planned. I was walking into the co-op near my place, grabbing ingredients for dinner, when I heard my name. Soft. Unsure. Hey. I turned and there he was. A little smaller than I remembered. Or maybe I was just standing taller now. We stood there for a second, both unsure of what to say. Finally, he nodded at my basket. Still cooking for one? I smiled. Sometimes two. Depends on the night. He smiled back, just a flicker. I'm glad you're doing well. Thanks. He didn't ask to catch up. Didn't launch into a monologue. Just said, take care, and walked off. And I let him go. Because not everything needs a bow. Some things just end quietly. That was the last time we spoke. And I'm okay with that. I'd already said everything I needed to by choosing me. These days, my life is simpler. Not in the empty way. In the freeing way. I know what I'm willing to give. I know what I'm no longer willing to carry. And I know the cost of making yourself small just to fit inside someone else's idea of family. It's a price I'll never pay again. Robin and I moved in together. Our place is small but filled with warmth. We hang art on the walls we actually like, not what someone gifted us out of guilt. We laugh every night. We fight fair. We listen. And not once, has Robin ever made me feel like I had to prove my worth just to earn a seat at the table. That alone has taught me more about love than decades in my father's house ever did. One day, I got a message from an unknown number. Just a picture. It was Heather's boys, smiling in front of their school. They looked older. And for the first time, I didn't feel that familiar tug of resentment. I just thought, I hope they grow up with boundaries. I hope they grow up knowing they don't owe anyone their lives. And then I deleted the photo. Not with bitterness. Just with peace. Peace isn't loud. It's not a parade. It's not a speech you make to prove you've healed. It's a quiet dinner. A late-night walk. A phone that doesn't buzz with other people's emergencies. It's sitting in your own home, hearing nothing, and realizing that silence means you're safe. Sometimes I still think about what would have happened if I'd just said yes. Babysat the kids. Played nice. Stayed in the role. But then I think about the version of me who would have kept shrinking to keep the peace. The version of me who never would have discovered what it feels like to be loved without being useful. And I'm glad I said no. Even if it cost me everything. Because what I gained was me. I'll never be the person they remember. That version is gone. The quiet sibling. The backup babysitter. The one who never complains. But I'm finally okay with that. Because who I am now is someone I actually like. And if there's one thing I've learned, it's this. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do, for yourself, is walk away. Not to hurt them. But to finally heal you. Thank you for watching the video, like it if you watched the video to the end and don't forget to subscribe. Have a nice day.